Hello everybody and welcome to this presentation. My name is David Donnellan and I'm here today to present to you about supply and demand. This presentation is a brief introduction into supply and demand and it's what we can expect to see as we go further on our study in this topic. So what are we going to learn today? Well, the first thing we're going to look at is the rationale, so the why. So why is supply and demand important to us and why is it important that we know about it? The next thing we're going to look at then is context. So basically, what is it all about and what can we expect to see as we study this topic? Next up is teaching methodologies. So these teaching methodologies are going to create an active learning environment for us in the classroom. So in this section we're going to learn about all the different ways in which we can learn about supply and demand to make it more engaging for yourselves. Following this, we'll look at key skills and how the topic of supply and demand enhances these key skills. Lastly, then we'll look at cross-curricular links, so basically how supply and demand can further our understanding of other subjects that we might be studying. So why supply and demand? Well, first and foremost, it plays a significant role in our everyday lives. What holidays we book and what food we buy are all factors based off supply and demand. Furthermore, it outlines how different factors affect the supply and demand of products and services, so it demonstrates how the likes of technology and labour could affect the supply and demand of products in the marketplace. The last key reason why we need to understand supply and demand is it teaches us how prices are set. So it teaches us that the market will guide the price to an equilibrium level where supply and demand is equal, as represented by the graph at the top of the screen. So what is it all about? Well, supply and demand looks at all the different aspects that may affect the actual supply and demand of a product or services. In supply terms, this could be anything down from the manufacturing process to the raw materials, whereas demand, a lot of the time, will depend on what we want versus what we need and our disposable income. So now let's have a look at supply and demand separately. In the topic of demand, there's going to be a lot of key aspects that we're going to see. The first one we're going to see is the actual factors that influence demand. These factors can be anything from price, even what season it is, or what modern day technology is out that will influence the demand of a good. Next, the topic will cover a lot on what's known as demand curves. Demand curves are a representation of what happens to the demand of a good if the price changes. Next, we will look at the different types of goods and different types of demand that there is. For example, the demand for iPhones and the demand for food are very, very different because one is a luxury good which we want, however food and water are necessities to live, so therefore they're always in demand. And the last key area of demand is what's known as elasticity of demand. Elasticity of demand is essentially us measuring how much the change in demand will be if that product or service were to change its price. So now let's look at the supply side of things. If we look at the subtopics of supply, we actually see that they're very, very similar to the demand subtopics. First one we're going to look at is the factors that influence supply. Similar to demand, these factors can be price, weather and technology. Similar to demand, supply is also represented by its own curve, known as the supply curve. A supply curve represents how much the producer is willing to supply at a different level of price. The next subtopic that we're going to look at is elasticity of supply. Similar to the principle that we had previously witnessed in demand, elasticity of supply is a measure of the change in the supply of a good depending on the change in the price of that good. The final subtopic we'll look at in supply is short-run and long-run supply. Short-run and long-run supply essentially tell us how suppliers will change the level of production of their product or service depending on the given time period, whether it be 3 months to a year or longer. So now let's discuss the teaching methods that we could use for this topic. One method that we could use quite frequently is think, pair, share. This is where I pose a question to you, the students. You think about it in your pairs, and then you share your answers and views with the rest of the class. The next teaching method that we will also use quite frequently is class discussions. Class discussions are a brilliant way of getting everyone involved in the topic. For example, one possible discussion is iPhones and smartphones. Are they now a necessity or are they still something that we want? The final teaching method that we're going to discuss today is group projects, and the use of group projects is very effective for gaining an understanding. It also allows us to fulfill different roles within our groups. So for example, someone could be a part of the supply side while someone could be a part of the demand side. And this is something that will be beneficial, and we can alter these roles throughout the projects. So now let's discuss key skills and how supply and demand can improve these key skills. The first key skill that really develops with supply and demand is critical and creative thinking. Through supply and demand, we think abstractly about different factors and how they may have knock-on effects. For example, say we're a car owner and the petrol prices have gone up. So how does this affect the demand for the other products as a result of our disposable income going down? The next key skill that will be greatly enhanced throughout this topic is our communication skills. Our communication skills will develop through our teaching methodologies, which all include group projects, classroom discussions, and think, pair, share. The final key skill that supply and demand really brings about is being personally effective. So it teaches us about the market, and it also teaches us how to manage and utilise our resources to get the maximum out of them, especially our disposable income. So now we'll take a look at cross-curricular links. So how supply and demand can help benefit us for the other subjects that we're studying. First off, in literacy and numeracy terms, supply and demand is very beneficial. Through new terminology and calculations, supply and demand will definitely help boost all of our literacy and numeracy skills. One subject you all may be studying is history, and if you are, then supply and demand is a great benefit to this subject, as we will take a look back over time and see how supply and demand trends have changed over time with the introduction of new technology, more disposable income, and other factors. For all you geography students, you will also benefit from studying supply and demand. Why? Because we'll take a look at how the supply and demand of goods varies based on different geographical locations. For example, in Spain there are far more beach towels sold than in Ireland. The final subject is business. Why? Because supply and demand, economics, it's so closely related to business. So an understanding of supply and demand is definitely beneficial for all you students who are studying business. So let's take a look back over what we've learned today. First, we looked at the rationale, so why supply and demand was important to us. Following this, we looked at the context, basically what supply and demand is all about. And then we touched on teaching methodologies, so the methods of active learning that we're going to use for this course. Following this, we looked at key skills, and how this topic of supply and demand can help enhance our key skills. Last but not least, we looked at cross-curricular links, so how supply and demand can help play a role in our understanding of other subjects. So that completes this presentation on supply and demand. I would like to say thank you, and I hope that you all enjoyed the presentation.
Created using Powtoon.